Now.
Hi, my name is Jack Ames. I'm the director and founder of Defend Life. We're here at Our Lady of Perpetual Help, this wonderful Catholic parish in suburban Ellicott City. We have a great pastor, Father Eric Arnold. We just had a wonderful potluck supper. These ladies at Our Lady of Perpetual Help are great cooks, and we're great eaters. But anyway, we're here to hear a wonderful talk by Reggie Littlejohn. And immediately after the talk, we're going to go to questions and answers for the benefit of our Facebook Live audience. We hope there's hundreds of you and thousands out there watching. So here's a few facts about Reggie Littlejohn. She's the founder of Women's Rights Without Borders. She's fighting forced abortion and sexual slavery in not China, but communist China. Let us not forget, China is still a communist country. She's a graduate of Yale Law School. She began her journey by representing a Chinese woman who had been forcibly sterilized. And she will explain how forced abortion is still legal in communist China. Oh, they think we've gotten rid of the one-child policy. Guess what? They're still forcing women to have abortions. A visibly pregnant woman who does not have a permit, sounds like the Brave New World to me, can be arrested and forcibly aborted by the family planning police. Reggie has testified before Congress, our State Department, and the European Parliament. Her husband, a former United Methodist minister, whose name is Rob, is now a Catholic convert. He actually resigned his ministry as a United Methodist minister last June 30th, and he is on track, and this is the really good news. He's on track to become an ordained Catholic priest under the ordinariate of the chair of St. Peter. Isn't that wonderful? And it was the pro-life movement that brought her husband, Rob, into the Catholic Church and into the pro-life movement. Please welcome Reggie Littlejohn.
Thank you very much, Jack, and thank you to the members here of Our Lady of Perpetual Help. And so we didn't have time for a sound check beforehand, so I guess we'll just wait for a second to make sure that we didn't.
Go ahead and talk a little bit and we'll see.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very well.
Okay. Oh, there it goes. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, as Jack mentioned, I'm Reggie Littlejohn. I'm the president of Women's Rights Without Frontiers. We are an international coalition to combat forced abortion and sex-selective abortion of baby girls in China, but we're also Women's Rights Without Frontiers, and so we would like to expand our work into India and also even possibly into the United States in terms of women's rights issues surrounding these matters. So, something that people might not realize is that, I think most of you have heard, how many people here have heard that China ended its one-child policy? About half. So this language of China has abandoned, China has abolished, China has scrapped its one-child policy is very misleading. What happened basically is that on January 1st of 2016, China moved from a one-child policy to a two-child policy. And the new rule is that every couple in China is allowed to have 2 children. So the way that that was announced as having abandoned it was meant, I think, by the Chinese Communist Party to imply that they had, or to sort of make everybody believe that they had stopped all coercive population control in China. And that's actually not the case, because if you're not, every couple is allowed to have 2 children. You have to be a member of a couple. So single women are still forcibly aborted, are allowed to have 2 children. The word allowed implies the entire infrastructure of coercion and surveillance that women are still under in China. So after January 1st of 2016, there have been several reports that have come out of women in different areas of China, so I believe this might probably be nationwide, that have to come in 4 times a year for health checkups. So they check on their health, and they also check to see whether they're pregnant or not. And if they are pregnant, it depends on where you are, but in some areas of China, you will be given a choice of either paying a fine or having to have an abortion if you can't pay the fine. And so when a U.S. tourist, for example, goes over to China, sometimes the tour guide will say, well, you know, we abolished the one-child policy. If you want to have a second child, all you have to do is pay a fine. And in the United States, when we think of a fine, we think of maybe a traffic fine or something, $350. Well, that's not the kind of fine that they have in China for having an out-of-planned birth. Okay? In China, the fine can be up to, and I've even heard of it exceeding, 10 times a person's annual salary. So just imagine how much money you make in a year and multiply it by 10 and see if you could somehow come up with that kind of money to maintain a pregnancy on an emergency basis. Most people cannot come up with those fines, and then they don't have a choice. They're forced to abort their babies. And every couple is allowed to have 2 children. So what that means is that their children are still aborted. And as Chen Wen-chen, the venerable activist who has been jailed and tortured and his entire family persecuted for talking about the same issues I'm talking about from Chinese soil. As he said, when the one-child policy was shifted to a 2-child policy, he said, there's no reason to celebrate this. Now, instead of killing every baby after 1, they're killing every baby after 2. So, I would like to play a video now called Stop Forced Abortion, China's War on Women. And this video is a number of years old, but nevertheless, I think it brings to mind the terrible tragedy and human rights atrocity of forced abortion. And they are still occurring in China. I think that they've cut back somewhat on the late-term forced abortion. Although even after January 1st of 2016, there was a woman who was forcibly aborted at like 8 months. So, I mean, it does happen. And the thing that's really hard about this is that if a woman is forcibly aborted, it's very, very difficult to get this information out of China, because what happens is if a woman goes public with it, and in particular speaks to the Western press about it, then that Chinese government feels very shamed, and this woman and her entire family can be heavily persecuted. So the way that I got my information, first we have documented forced abortion in at least 8 provinces. The way that I got my initial information was that there was a man whose wife had been forcibly aborted, a late-term forced abortion, and he and his wife were so completely broken by this experience that they basically made a decision that they did not care whether they would live or whether they would die. And so he went to the surrounding villages and documented horrendous cases of forced abortion and and took photographs. And I mean, there's a lot. He found a document on a Chinese website for gynecologists and obstetricians, which I called Best Practices Infanticide, where these physicians were giving each other tips on how to make sure that a baby would be born dead in a late-term forced abortion. And that was on the official Chinese website, for obstetricians. So he found this, and I produced a report that was like 50 pages long to Congress, and that's how I got my information. Now we have a network on the ground inside of China where I get information as well. But basically, people have to be the Chinese. The way that the mainstream media speaks about the Chinese government is almost like they speak about the Chinese government and the American government in the same breath, as though they're somehow moral equivalents. They're not. Okay, the Chinese government was not elected. They took over, and they are a brutal totalitarian regime. And President Xi is consolidating power. And in fact, I don't know if you read about this, but they recently got rid of term limits, so he can stay in forever. All right? This is a frightening situation. So it's really hard to get information out of China about what's going on. So we do the best that we can. like I said, this video is a few years old, but forced abortion still does happen. And I would say if you want to miss a graphic image, there's one graphic image in it, and so when I say, and I have a photograph of her grieving the loss of her full-term baby, just shut your eyes for about 10 seconds and then you will not have to see the graphic image. I'm a litigation attorney, and in the 90s, I represented a client who had escaped China. I represented her in her case for political asylum in the United States, and she had been forcibly sterilized. That was my introduction to the reality behind the one-child policy. In fact, China's one-child policy causes more violence against women and girls than any other official policy on earth. I call it China's war on women and girls. When I say forced abortion, I mean women are literally dragged out of their homes or off the streets. They can be jailed in family planning jail cells, forced to abort children that they want. And this can happen all the way up to the 9th month of pregnancy. Some of these forced abortions are so violent that the women themselves die along with their full-term babies. One case that I'll never forget is of a young woman who was 7 months pregnant without a birth permit. So that would be an illegal pregnancy, who was walking down the street and she was grabbed by family planning cadres, dragged off the street, strapped down to a table, forced to abort the baby that she very desperately wanted. And in the end, one of the medical personnel came to her with the body of her aborted baby and said, "You need to pay for this so that we can dispose of the body." And she said she didn't have any money, so they just laid that body right next to her in the bed. And I've got a photograph of her looking down and just grieving the loss of this 7-month-old baby that was forcibly aborted. It does not matter whether you are pro-choice or pro-life on this issue. No one supports forced abortion because it's not a choice. And this violence must stop. My goal in establishing women's rights for frontiers is to end forced abortion and sexual slavery in China. And to that end, I have testified before Congress, I've addressed the European Parliament, briefed the White House. Several years ago, no one was talking about the one-child policy. And now, because of the documentation that has been generated, two things have happened. Number one, the Chinese Communist Party cannot deny that the one-child policy is enforced through forced abortion, forced sterilization, and infanticide. And number two, it seems that almost everybody is talking about it at this point. It's become a household issue. Stop the violence. End China's war on women. Forced abortion is not a choice. an idea of the scale of the problem. In the United States, we have about 1 million abortions a year. The Chinese Communist Party boasts that it has prevented 400 million lives through the one-child policy. 400 million. So that's the equivalent of the entire population of the United States and Canada combined. And they've done it through hundreds of millions of abortions, also forced sterilizations. Like I said, my first client was my first asylum client was forcibly sterilized. So let me just talk for a second about what happened to her. I don't think she actually violated the one-child policy. So this was, she had a boy and a girl, but the one-child policy was already relaxed in certain areas of China. If you're like living out in the countryside, you can have 2 kids. So I don't really think she actually violated the policy, but there were sterilization quotas, all right, so that they had to perform a certain number of sterilizations in that area that year, and they were low on the quotas. And number 2, they didn't want her to have any more kids. So it's like, you've had your 2, we're sterilizing you. And she did not want to be sterilized because the people who perform these sterilizations are not like highly trained gynecological surgeons. They are people with minimal training, and then out in the countryside, they don't even have an antiseptic environment. So women get infections during these sterilizations, and their entire health is ruined, not just their reproductive health. And so she resisted and resisted and resisted, and she said that there were like 10 cadres that would come to her door every day and say, we want to sterilize you, will you agree? And she would say no. So finally they just picked, she was a tiny woman, they literally picked her up, dragged her out of her home, screaming and crying, held her down to an operating table, cut her open and tied her tubes. All of this is without anesthesia. So she said that the pain was just unimaginable. It was like somebody had a blowtorch inside of her. And then sure enough, just like other women in her village, she ended up with a massive infection, and she had chronic back pain, chronic abdominal pain, and chronic migraines from that moment forward up to the point where I met her, and this was like 15 years later, so probably for the rest of her life, it just ruined her, it completely ruined her health. And that was, so this is what I'm talking about forced sterilization, and they've done hundreds of millions of these. Hundreds of millions. I can go on and on. You can ask me more about forced sterilization if you want to. So the one-child policy we have 2 different kinds of abortions that we address. One is the forced abortion by the government. The other one is forced abortion by the family. All right? So what I'm talking about here is sex-life abortion of baby girls, which is almost always forced. These women, they get pregnant, and their mother-in-law usually is the one that's like pressuring them to get an ultrasound. They don't want to get an ultrasound because they know that the reason for the ultrasound is to see whether it's a boy or a girl, and they know that if it's a girl, they're going to have to abort her. And by the way, you can't tell by ultrasound the gender of a child until it's like, 5 months? So all of these, and also the women just drag their feet. They don't want to go in. So some of them wait until they're 8 months pregnant before they go in for that ultrasound, and then if it's a girl, and the mother-in-law is going to bear down on her, and the husband usually either steps aside and lets his mother do it because he actually agrees with her, or he joins with the mother, and they pressure the woman into having to aborting her daughter, which I would call that a forced abortion, even if it's not aborted by forced by the government. You're still forced by your family, and your husband's sometimes they say, "Well, I'll walk out on you." Sometimes there's domestic violence involved with this. So. And this is not just China. This kind of situation also exists in India and in other countries as well. So what this has done is it's led to a situation where there are now about 35 million more men living in China and about the same number of more men living in India than women. And so what that is doing is it is driving the market for human trafficking and sexual slavery, of course. So there's this whole domino effect that goes from this coercive low birth limit, whether it's a one-child policy or a two-child policy. There's forced abortion, forced sterilization, infanticide, and then leading to the sex-selective abortion of baby girls, which then leads to human trafficking and sexual slavery. It's like a very dark domino effect. But in terms of the sex-selective abortion of baby girls, at its worst, it was 2003, where there were about 121 boys born for every 100 girls born in China. Now, normal is 105 to 107 boys born. Nature has provided that we have more boys born than girls born because boys die easier. I mean, they were actually the weaker sex. But anyway, the only way that you can achieve 120, 121 boys to 100 girls is through sex-selective abortion, and it's still happening. I've got an article here. It's dated April 14th, 2018. So that's like, what, 3 days ago? And it's called Chinese Couples Want Boys. Trust me, I'm a fertility doctor. And this guy is a fertility doctor, and his specialty is IVF, in vitro fertilization. And so Chinese couples will come in and say, do you do any genetic testing on the embryos? And if so, is there any way that we can select for a boy? And that's illegal in China. See, and it's also illegal in India. In China and in India, it's illegal to get an ultrasound to see what the gender is of the fetus, and it's illegal to then abort because it's a girl. But there are plenty of places that you can go, and just pay some money under the table and find out what the gender is of your baby, and then you just go to the clinic. You don't say, I'm aborting this baby because she's a girl. You just say, I want an abortion. They're asking questions. And then what you find out is, in the end, when they do the demographic surveys in the census, that you're greatly lacking in girls. So they know that this is going on. And he said that his obstetrical colleagues are frustrated with him because he won't allow couples to select for boys. And so this is a quote from the obstetrical colleagues. If you fertility doctors would just help them choose their child's sex, we could save some women the trouble of going through abortion after abortion. And then they said that they know of people, obstetricians have treated women who say they've been pregnant 5 or 6 times, they have given birth only once, and do not have a history of natural miscarriage. So this is what happens: is that they can't, if they can't find out the gender of the fetus, they'll just get pregnant over and over again, and just keep having ultrasound, seeing if it's a girl, and then aborting. There was a woman last summer whose husband forced her to abort 4 baby girls in 1 year, and then she died. So this is still happening in China. It's happening in India. And I want to just play the trailer to a film called It's a Girl, which which is a trailer to a 63-minute documentary. The first half of it's on India, the second half of it's on China. I'm in the film as an expert on China's foreign child policy. And we showed this film on Capitol Hill and the European Parliament, the Irish Parliament, the European Parliament. So let me just show you the trailer, and something you might consider is actually showing this film at your church, the whole thing. It's fascinating. Yeah, that'd be good, thanks.
Today, India and China eliminate more girls than the number of girls born in America every year.
The definition of genocide is a systematic and methodical extermination of a certain group. And the gendercide is that systematic and methodical extermination of a gender group.
Why are Indian households secretly and brutally eliminating daughters from their family system?
They just wet the cloth and they fold it like this and they put it on the face. So the child can't breathe. Immediately the child will die.
Thế thì long thao ai nó phụ địa,我来找钱想家就来都买回。
所以他当时就是用一个纸箱包着，亲民多数是年轻人，因为他们一般情况下就是超生的。
But what this is an entire system, a social machinery that says we don't want females.
But the real problem started after I became pregnant. They started asking me for a sex determination. They wanted to know if the children are girls or boys. They started torturing me to get an abortion done. What should I do to save my daughters?
कि उसके सिरे लाके देखा तो वो तो यहाँ पे गले पे पूरा निशान पड़ा हुआ है। निशान पड़ने के बाद तब मैं छोड़ना पीटना हमारे तो होश ही उड़ गए थे लड़की को देख के इसने मार कैसे दी।
如果按计划生育生的话，我就只能生2个。哎呀，反正他村子里都有抓人搞这些工作的嘛。 就被他们知道我们在那里。மனசுல அதை வச்சிருக்க கூடாது. பையனா இருந்தா வச்சுக்கணும், பெண்ணா இருந்தா வச்சுக்கணும். அப்படி இப்படி பிடிச்சா பேசிட்டு வந்த உடனே நானே பேசிக்கணும். மறுபடி பையனே இல்லை அப்படின்னு 8 குழந்தைங்களாட்டம் கொண்டு விட்டோம்.
So, as that documentary said, there are an estimated 200 million women and girls missing in the world today due to sex-selective abortion. That number, 200 million, is greater than all of the wars, all the casualties in all the wars of the 20th century. So I would say this is the true war on women. So what is women's rights advocates doing about this? We have international advocacy, so I've spoken all over the Western world about this, also Hong Kong. I don't know if Jack mentioned this, because I was getting mic'd up, but I've spoken 8 times at the U.S. Congress. I've spoken many times at the State Department. I've even addressed the White House. I've spoken several times at the European Parliament, the British Parliament, the Irish Parliament, and many, many times with Vatican officials. Just raising the visibility to build an international movement to end this. People sometimes say, well, why are you doing this with China? Why don't you focus on the United States? Well, number one, there are many wonderful groups focusing on the United States, and you have the pictures of some of the leaders of these groups right now. I don't know any other organization. I think that we are the only organization that focuses exclusively on ending coercive birth control in China. And I also believe that we are the only organization in the world that has a network on the ground inside of China that's actually saving baby girls. So that's the next thing that we do is we have something called our Save a Girl campaign. You can see the poster for it right there. Where we have a network of field workers and we are able to identify women. We find out about women who are being either who've had an ultrasound at the local hospital and have scheduled themselves for an abortion, or who have given birth to a girl and are being pressured by their families to abort or abandon that baby girl. And we will actually go to that woman's door. So I'm talking about a Chinese national, not a person from the United States. Okay, so our network in China is from the local people. Go to her door and say, please don't abort or abandon your baby because she's a girl, she's a precious daughter, and we will give you a monthly stipend for a year to empower you to keep your daughter. And so what this does is 2 things. And we say girls are as good as boys. Now this is something that's just like totally like duh in the United States. Of course girls are as good as boys. All right? I mean, when I was growing up as a girl, I I actually thought girls were superior to boys because I figured out that girls can do everything boys can do, plus we can have babies, right? So anyway, so we understand girls are as good as boys. But for them, that is a radical concept. They've never heard that in the Chinese countryside. And their entire culture is telling them to abort, particularly that second girl. See, that's a majority of the girls that we're helping are second daughters. So even under the two-child policy, demographers have found that couples are willing to let the first girl live if she's the first child, figuring they still have that second child to try to get that boy. And that's where you get the genocide on that second daughter. So we really, really reach out to couples that have a second daughter. So girls are as good as boys, and we will give you a monthly stipend. So we give them money. Like our field worker comes by to every single family that we're supporting and hands them 160 yuan a month, and they sign a little chart that shows that they received the money, and that is enough. Between the encouragement and also the money, it's enough for them to go to their mothers-in-law and say, look, I can't abort, I can't abandon this baby girl. She's a lucky girl. Look, she's already bringing money into the family. So we use the culture around luck to counteract the culture around son preference, and we've saved hundreds of baby girls this way, okay? And we're the only, if you want to save a baby girl in China, we're the only way to do it, okay? As far as I know. I don't know any other organization that's doing this. Okay. Another thing that's really important, it has to do with Chinese studies that have worldwide impact and that have been either understudied or even possibly suppressed in the United States. What I'm talking about is a link between abortion and breast cancer, and the link between abortion and low birth weight and miscarriage. So what Chinese studies have found, the Chinese studies that came out several years ago that found that for every abortion a woman has, her chances of getting breast cancer goes up 44%. They have 2 abortions, it goes up like 76%. They have 3 abortions, it goes up 89%, almost doubling your chance of breast cancer. Now, and then in terms of the low birth weight, the more abortions a woman has, the more she is prone to miscarriage and low birth weight. And if you think of the physiology of an abortion, you can understand why. I mean, you're cranking open a woman's cervix when it doesn't want to open, and you can very easily damage that cervical muscle. The cervix is a muscle, okay? So if you tear it or you lacerate it or you do whatever you do to it, then it won't be able to hold baby in. So you end up with more miscarriages and you end up with more low birth weight infants. Now, why does it matter if an infant is low birth weight? Well, here's the Chinese study. It says here that low birth weight increases the risk of neurodevelopmental problems, respiratory tract infections, and behavioral problems. According to the study, those with very low birth weight suffer from conditions including cerebral palsy, blindness, impaired hearing, and learning disabilities, as well as death, okay? So what we're dealing with in the Chinese countryside is you have the initial human rights violation, which is the forced abortion. But then 20 years from then, the woman could develop breast cancer. So that, and since the breast cancer was because of a forced abortion, that's another human rights violation. And I'll tell you, in the Chinese countryside, they don't have the kind of care for breast cancer that we have here. I was able to have bilateral mastectomies with implant reconstruction and go on with my, actually I almost died. That's a whole other story. But it was not the cancer that almost killed me. It was like this MRSA staph infection that knocked me flat on my back for 5 years. That's a whole other story. But what I'm saying is, they don't have anything. So a woman in the countryside, could, and it's really kind of a death sentence. So and to me, it's another human rights violation because it came from a forced abortion. And the same thing with the low birth weight infants. And if a baby is born with cerebral palsy, a really disabling condition because of a forced abortion, in my opinion, that's another human rights violation against the future child. And there's an implication in the United States for all of this as well, because even under the Roe v. Wade decision, women are supposed to be able to have informed consent to having an abortion. Well, arguably, if a woman is not told about the connection between abortion and breast cancer, and is not told about the connection between abortion and low birth weight babies and subsequent pregnancies, and she consents to an abortion, was that an informed consent? I think arguably not. So this has an implication for U.S. law. So I'm glad that I have a law degree that can move in all kinds of different directions. So the last thing I want to talk about that we do is we save people on an individual basis. So, for example, we played a leading role in, I don't know if anybody here has heard of Chen Guangchen. No. Yes. 3 people say yes. Of helping him get here to the United States. And then also Annie Zhang. So my daughter, this is Annie Zhang. Her father is Zhang Lin. He is a major activist, or was a major activist in China, pro-democracy, heavily involved in the Tiananmen Square movement, and has been jailed and tortured repeatedly for his advocacy. And when they could not silence him by directly persecuting him, they went and kidnapped his daughter out of her elementary school. She was 10 years old and in the 4th grade, and was called into the principal's office and was told, "See these nice men? They're friends of your father. Why don't you go with them? He'll take you to your father." And they took her to a detention center. She spent the night in the detention center. So her father did join her late that night, but then they would not allow her to return to school. They put her and her father under house arrest. Then they escaped house arrest and became fugitives. And then when they were caught, her father knew that he'd be heading back into detention. So he got word out to me saying, "Could you please help me get Annie out of the country because she cannot lead a normal life here." So we, with the help of Congressman Chris Smith, you probably know, and other people and very brave activists in China, we were able to get Annie and her sister out of China and have been raising them as our own daughters. Now, her sister's 24 years old, she's out on her own, but Annie, she came, she was 10, she's now 15, and she was going to spend her life in an orphanage, all right, but we were able to get her out, and she came to our home, and we have a piano, so she started messing around with the piano, just trying to sound out tunes. Didn't speak a word of English, couldn't do any of her schoolwork. So I said to my husband, "Why don't we get her piano lessons from a Mandarin-speaking piano teacher? It'll be a nice outlet for her, something she can do while she's learning English." And so we got her lessons from a teacher named Matt Wong. We did not know at the time, but found out that he is one of the top teachers in the country. And within 2 years, she won an international competition to play piano in Carnegie Hall. And she performed in Carnegie Hall a year ago, Christmas. So EWTN came over to So this is EWTN did a feature on our family like a couple weeks ago. It was very sweet. So can we turn the light on again? Oh, here we go.
Reggie Littlejohn has been leading the charge to end forced abortion and gendercide in China. To put this tragedy into perspective, some estimates claim for every 1 abortion in the United States, there are 23 in China. Putting a stop to this is a mission Reggie Littlejohn carries in her heart and into her home. Here's this week's Pro-Life Focus. These 2 women, Reggie Littlejohn and 15-year-old Annie Zhang, were raised worlds apart, but share a number of things in common. From a passion for the piano,
all right, you can use that,
to a love for cooking, to value the joys of home in the United States, because the 2 also know the ugly reality of another nation.
There's really not freedom of religion in China at all. Like, the Communist Party is like your god.
They do not have freedom of speech. They are suffering under a brutal totalitarian regime. And if we don't stand up for them, no one else will.
Littlejohn herself awakened to China's urgent problems when she, a Yale Law School graduate, represented a Chinese refugee woman's case for political asylum, a woman who was dragged out of her home and forcibly sterilized.
During that time frame, I had 2 miscarriages myself. And so I lost 2 of my own children, and I think that because I had, of course, not suffered the violence of a forced abortion, but I had suffered the loss of children I wanted, that the fact that these women were being forcibly aborted hit me on a visceral level that I think it might not have if I had not had my own miscarriages.
It was then Littlejohn began to grasp the brutality of communist China.
The greatest hemorrhage of human life in the world is flowing out of China today.
Her desire to protect women and children was only strengthened after working alongside a saint for 6 weeks in a Calcutta home for abandoned babies.
Seeing those baby girls that had been abandoned and holding them in my arms and seeing Mother Teresa's commitment to those baby girls and the faith that motivated her was an enormous inspiration to me.
With a new mission in sight, Reggie Littlejohn founded Women's Rights Without Frontiers in the 1990s to take aim at China's coercive population control. She's become the leader on the forefront of this issue.
These are official Chinese doctors discussing how best to kill newborn babies as they're being born during induced labor force abortions.
Even though China changed its notorious one-child policy to become a two-child policy, Littlejohn says the Asian country needs to get out of the business of telling people how many kids to have. With the network inside of China, her group, Women's Rights Without Frontiers, helps save women in the womb to widows in distress to this woman, China's youngest prisoner of conscience.
She and her father escaped house arrest. They became fugitives. And when they were caught, her father knew that he was going to end up in detention for having escaped house arrest. And so he got word out to me saying, can you please help me get my daughter out of China and to the United States? We've been raising Annie as our daughter ever since. So that was 2013, and she's been with us for about 4.5 years.
I was really happy when Annie came into our family, because I wasn't done being a dad yet.
Annie now calls Reggie Mom.
My mom's work really, it kind of helped me convert into Catholicism, because to know someone that would just give up basically anything to help these women who are not related to you, it's something that normal people wouldn't do. It has to be through God.
And it was through God, Reggie's work also reached her husband, a longtime United States Methodist pastor.
If I could point to one period or one episode that where I would mark my conversion to the Catholic Church, it would be 5 years ago this year, the March for Life in 2013. And we were there because Reggie was receiving pro-life award. Everywhere I looked, it was Catholic. And I remember saying to myself, where are the United Methodists?
His family has settled into a new routine. Annie, now in high school, has learned English and has also taken up piano, even performing in Carnegie Hall. An extraordinary opportunity early on in her time in the U.S., though it's China and protection of Chinese women that continues to be on Annie and Reggie's heart and mind.
When I was in China, you never really think about it, because it's not something that people would like to share, because all the brainwashing that the Communist Party gave us.
Because I know what's going on in China. I feel an absolute moral imperative, a responsibility to raise my voice, because they can't.
You could say, like mother, like daughter.
So something that they didn't have time to go into in that video, and that was a very short video, was the fact that Annie herself was almost forcibly aborted because it was her father's second child. So the family planning police were coming daily, almost banging the door down to drag her mother away for a forced abortion. Her mother threatened them. She said, I'm going to throw boiling water on you if you come in. Her father threatened them and said, I'm going to, had a knife and said, I'm going to kill you. Basically, it was really two very, very brave parents that protected Annie's life. And plus the fact that her father was a well-known dissident and was able to blog about what the Chinese government was doing, and so that it was making them look really bad, then that's how Annie survived. And also as a second daughter, she could easily have been aborted. So she, to me, is a symbol, like a living symbol of the beauty and the love and the brilliance that are being lost in China through forced abortion and sex-selective abortion of baby girls. And then, as was mentioned in this video, the other thing that we've just started doing, and we have not officially kicked off this program yet, but we will shortly because it's very successful, is we are starting to help abandoned, destitute widows. So these people are victims of the one-child policy as well, because of the destruction of the family structure in China. Traditionally, in the countryside, two people would have multiple children, who would have multiple children, who would have multiple children, and the family structure looked like this, okay? And so then when the old elderly couple got, disabled or old, they'd have a large family to support them. It was not a burden on anyone. Now, it's with the one-child policy, it's 4 grandparents go down to 2 parents that go down to 1 child, and lots of times people have no one to support them, particularly widows whose husbands may have died of a very expensive medical condition like cancer. So typically if someone, actually a couple of our widows, when their husbands were diagnosed with cancer, their husbands killed themselves. I mean, they knew that they just couldn't afford the treatment and they just jumped off a bridge or did whatever they did. Others tried to fight it, so that left the wife in a position of trying to borrow money from her family, and then he ended up dying anyway, so he's dead, she has no support, and she owes her family an astronomical amount of money. And her kids are not helping her. Some of these women have kids who are disabled or whatever, just busy. So these women are just like some of the poorest and most destitute and saddest people in the world, completely abandoned. And we'll go to their doors, just like we do to the mothers of the little babies, and we say, we're here to help you. And they'll say, well, why? And they'll say, well, because you need help. And they'll say, what do I have to do in return? You don't have to do anything in return. We are here because you are a human being and you need help and we care about you. Period. End of story. And this is a mind-blowing message for these women. I mean, these women, some of them are in their 70s or 80s or 90s. They've been through utter hell in Chinese history. They went through the takeover of China, and then the Great Leap Forward, and then the Cultural Revolution, and then who knows what else they've suffered. No one has ever come, including their own family, no one has ever come to them and said, I'm here to help you because you need help. And so, our field worker, our main field worker in China is a very Christian person, and she will just say, that she's Christian. And these women, and also the mothers and babies, are like, who are you people? Why are you just helping us? And not asking for anything in return. And then they want to find out more about God and Jesus, and some of them have become Christians, started going to church through this. So that's pretty cool, saving, souls as well as bodies. So that's basically what we do, and on the horizon, we would like to expand into India. We would like to just expand into the United States with the issues that I told you about, like raising the visibility of the abortion breast cancer link, raising the visibility of the abortion low birth weight link, which just are not being talked about. I mean, I think that every single pregnancy center should be handing out information about these. In fact, I think. You know how they say that the abortion center, I think the abortion centers, this should be part of informed consent. All these statistics should be part of informed consent. And you can help. I'm a local person. We just moved from California to Maryland a few months ago. You can volunteer. You can support the Save a Girl campaign. You can just go up on our womensrightswithoutfrontiers.org website, and right there it says Save a Girl. You can click on that and help us save girls. You can certainly pray for us. So, where are the, there are a couple of clipboards. Oh, here they are. Okay. I have some information up here. No. So, if you want to be on our newsletter list, we send out a newsletter by email. We're not like Jack that sends out hard copy newsletters. We just send out email newsletters. And if you want to be on our newsletter list, please sign this. Please put your email address down legibly, all right? And put a star by your name if you want to pray for us. And I will put you on our prayer team because we really do need prayer. Thank you very much.
Facebook Live audience. Reggie, tell people who are watching on Facebook Live how they get to your website.
Okay. Well, the name of my website is womensrightswithoutfrontiers.org. That's womensrightswithoutfrontiers.org. So when I started this organization, I was a lawyer and not a human rights activist. So I didn't understand why you would have like a website name that's easy. So anyway, yeah. So I just that's the name of the website. I mean, if you look up my name, Reggie Littlejohn, just in quotes, the first site that'll come up is my organization's website.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, I get the first question.
Oh, we're
what was your
down.
3 weeks? Tell us what your best memory of Mother Teresa was.
Oh.
The 3 weeks you spent with
I
her in
spent
Calcutta.
6 weeks with her.
6 weeks.
You know, I could speak for hours. In fact, I've even just thought of writing a book about my experience working with Mother Teresa. But if I had to just say one memory, okay, so when you're in Calcutta, or at least at that time, the community was very open. And so so they invited the volunteers to be with them at Mass in the morning and at Holy Hour in the afternoon. So I was typically late to both. So I came in late to Holy Hour. I walked in, and there are all these nuns in a room smaller than this, a concrete floor. I mean, these women were kneeling on burlap sacks on concrete floors. And I saw Mother Teresa over to the left, so I thought, okay, I'm going to sneak over to the right and get as far away from her as I can so I don't disturb her, right? Because I'm late. So I went over there and knelt over there, right? And I'm fiddling with my rosary, and all of a sudden I feel this presence above me. I look up, it's Mother Teresa. And she very gently showed me which bead they were on. This is how I learned that if I do not want to interrupt Mother Teresa in the middle of her rosary, I need to be on time for Holy Hour. And I have many, 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 many more stories. I almost joined her order. I wouldn't have joined her order except that I just married my husband. My husband and my son don't like to hear that.
Who has the next question?
Hi, Reggie. First, I just want to thank you for what you do. It's just incredible. I'm Sue Smith. I sent you an email about, I'm the Respect Life coordinator here at OLPH. But what you do just, I had no idea exactly what you did, but wow, I'm floored by what you do. Do you have a counterpart here in the United States to help us? I mean, I think it's wonderful what you're doing.
Oh, Jack Ames!
I think yes, we do have Jack. But when I listen to, how in China women are being forced to abort their second child, and here in the United States, everybody's going out and choosing to abort if they are not married, or even if they are married, or whatever. So it breaks my heart in both. So I feel your passion, and you inspire me. So I don't really have so much a question as just a, wow, you blow me away. I hope we can get some time together at some point and just talk, because John too, I know, has that passion for saving women in front of abortion clinics and stuff like that, and many people who are here. So I just want to applaud you once again for what you do and inspiring us for saving babies.
Well, thank you. I mean, really, all the glory goes to God. And
Amen.
I feel that it's a privilege, It's like, it is such a privilege to be able to be in a position to help people. It's just, it's incredible. I mean, when I was an attorney, I was a very driven person. I know you'd never think that I would possibly be a driven person. But I was an extremely driven person, and I would pull all-nighters. And I had a sleeping bag and a pillow in my office, because I would spend the night in the office at least one day a week, usually 2 days a week. And the most days in a row that I ever pulled all-nighters, or almost all-nighters where I just lie down on my floor for an hour, was 10. I found out when I was done with that the Guinness World Record was 11, so if I'd known that, I might have pushed it out a little bit. Good enough. But I just remember being up there at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning under this intense deadline, and just thinking to myself, God, or not thinking to myself, thinking to God, or maybe this is like a silent prayer to God. I wish that if I'm going to be pouring out my life energy like this, I wish that it could be for something that's making a difference. Because while I was passionate for my clients, it was a manufactured passion. Because they're always arguing about money, which is important. I mean, I've dealt with litigation arguing about money. I think it's important, but I also know that if the other side had walked in with the money, that we would have been representing the other side, and I could have been, just as passionate about the other side. And I didn't want to be doing something that was sort of morally neutral. I mean, my husband would reassure me. He'd say, "Look, what you're doing is not morally neutral. It's good because if you weren't doing it, then the clients would be out there killing each other, literally. Okay, so you're saving lives by doing litigation." I'm like, okay, that's kind of far-fetched. I guess I'll have to go with that for the time being. But anyway. But anyway, so I just feel every day that it's a privilege to wake up and know that I am doing something that's making a real difference, and that there are people that are walking around in China right now that would not be if we weren't there and literally at their doorstep saving their lives. So, yes.
Next question.
So what do you need most help with?
Oh, what do I need most help with?
Yeah. What can we do? I mean, what would be the best thing or the most important thing that we would do to help this?
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, okay, so, okay, different people have different talents, and it's really hard to say, what is the thing that I need the most. Like, for example, the person who does all of our finances is a banker, in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and she's a professional banker, and she's just doing that on a volunteer basis because this is what she does for her volunteer work. And that's a very high level person who's doing very high level stuff. And I've had other people who are very high level doing very high level stuff. But I mean, basically, I play almost every single role in the entire organization. So I'm the president. I am the research analyst. I am the publicist. I'm the administrator. If you donate to my organization, you will get a hand-signed letter from me personally. I don't know anybody else who does that, and I probably should stop doing it because it's extremely time-consuming. But we send out this massive Christmas mailing to all of our, anybody who's like saved a girl list is $300 or more, and everybody gets basically a Christmas ornament with the face of one of our babies that we saved with a personal letter from me. It's really, really cute, and that's a huge amount of effort. Like people would get together and help address those, and I have a dream that just like the Pregnancy Center North has like a banquet or something where people get together. I don't know whether now that we're here in this area whether people can get together and that we could have an annual event like something like that. I don't know, but anyway. When people want to volunteer, I just say, what do you want to do? What makes you happy? Like, for example, somebody who's volunteering artwork. There was somebody who, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Patrick Madrid show. It's a big show in California. Yeah. So I was on the Patrick Madrid show. Somebody called me up and said, I am a publicist, and I would like to help you with your branding. And I'm like, okay. So, yes.
One of the things that you said so when you were talking about the, knocking on women's doors, and if they don't abort their baby, you would pay them the stipend, and I believe you said it was it 160 yuan a month?
Right, so that comes out to about $20 US.
That's what I wanted to know, because if you think about how many more women you can get to if people knew that's all it was, $20 a month. Think of all the Save the Children organizations around the world. They're like, for $20 or $25 a month, you can support this child. Well, I mean, yes, but those children have already made it to life.
Right.
So knowing that $20 a month would bring another child to life, and I liked how you talked about dealing with the Chinese culture, and luck. We learned a lot about that when the Olympics were in Beijing, because it was a big deal, 8 being the lucky number and all those different things. But you know, when those women go to their families and say, this is a lucky child because it's bringing money into the family, you know, and making it more acceptable to keep their children, you know, that's, you know, $20 a month is not very much.
No, it's not. It's not. And so we have a lot of monthly donors who give. We ask them to give $25 a month because there's $5 that goes to the extremely brave field worker, you know, who does this work. And actually, we kick in money as well. I mean, she gets like more than $5 per. She gets like $10 per person, because these are all, they're not all in the same place. We're out in the Chinese countryside, and so these are far-flung villages, and she will get the money to these people, and where we are, there's, you know, seasons like they have here, so there's times when there's, you know, rain, snow, sleet, you know, crushing heat or whatever, she will get the money to those mothers. So, anyway, yes. I guess the last question, I don't want to hold everybody up. Oh, okay, he's got the mic, so he's got to go.
I want to mention how we are defeating abortion. There is an organization that is creating a partnership with Defend Life and 40 Days for Life and all kinds of 40 Days for all kinds of pro-life organizations. That organization is doing that in order to get large numbers of people communicating with their legislators. That organization who is creating that coalition, that Voice of the People, the name of that organization is Maryland Right to Life. You can Google search it. And that is the only way we're going to defeat abortion. The numbers will do it. The logic does not, is not understood by the pro-choice people.
There's a question over here. But she's trying to get all right.
My question is, since you're adding this money every month, what's the option of actually getting that woman out of the country to have her baby?
No, they don't. That's not our model. The model. Okay, so thank you for that question. And another question people have is, how can I adopt one of these babies? That's also not our model. Okay, so we do not get babies out from the mother and put them up for international adoption, and we do not get the women out of the country to have their babies in the United States. That's something that rich women do in China. So, you know, like people in the United States, they will say, well, I know somebody, and actually I housed a student in my home, and he said he had a sister or a brother, and he had two sisters or a brother, 3 kids in the family. Well, just think of how this person got into your home. These are not like poor people from the Chinese countryside. These are the children of the elite. So that either they're very wealthy or they're connected to, you know, they're Chinese Communist Party officials' children, or both. And yes, exceptions are made, and that's just part of what causes tension between rich and poor. But what our model is that the mother keeps her kid, right? So she's able to go to her husband, go to her mother-in-law, saying, I can't abort, I can't abandon. Abandon meaning also give her away. So that's one of the things the mother-in-law say to the mothers. They say, why don't you just give her away? Well, give her away can mean place her with a childless couple, and it can also mean leave her in a field to die. Okay, so we don't know. I mean, give her away is like a euphemism that covers a lot of different behaviors. And so what we do is we enable the women to keep and raise their own kids.
So a follow-on to that then, if that's the case, if they don't catch them and the baby is born, there's no problem. Is that the case?
Okay, so if they don't catch them and the baby is born, it depends on whether it's a legal pregnancy or not. So so under the 2-child policy, if you're not married, you can't have a kid. If it's a 3rd child, you can't have it. Right. Now, if it's a second daughter, and it's just a second child, in some areas you still have to get a birth permit. There's still like a waiting period between the 2 kids. And in other areas of China, you know, you're allowed to have 2 kids unless you have 2 kids. It's different in different areas. So it depends on where. But if it's an area where they are just allowed to have 2 kids and they don't have birth permits, then yeah, then the baby would be born. Because the problem was not that she was going to be an illegal baby. The problem is that they didn't want a second girl.
I see.
Yeah.
We have time for two more?
Yes. Two more questions.
I was unclear on the India aspect. Is that more family forced, or is there actually government involvement there?
That is 100% family enforced. So what the similarity between China and India is that they both have son preference, and for similar reasons. In China and India both, they have a saying that raising a daughter is like watering somebody else's garden, because all the love, all the resources, all the education you put into raising that girl from an infant up to a marriageable age. In China and India, traditionally, when a young couple gets married, the young woman goes over to the young man's family, and they together could even be moving into his parents' home and then supporting his parents. So it's like a form of social security. And that's why when you're dealing with a second daughter and you can only have 2 kids, people can sometimes feel like, I have a choice. Either I can face impoverishment as an elderly person or commit gendercide. And some of them choose to commit gendercide. So in India, in China they have the coercive low birth limit that India doesn't have. India has something called dowry that China doesn't have. And dowry is illegal, but it's still practiced. So the dowry system is that when a young couple gets married, the young woman's family pays the young man's family a very large amount of whatever is their currency, depending on who they are. So you're out in the countryside, it might be a cow, okay, very pricey thing. Or if you happen to be a multimillionaire, it might be a yacht. It's just whatever is proportional to your income level. And people just do the math and they figure it's cheaper for me to abort this girl now than it is to pay whatever it is 20 years from now when she gets married. And so that's that's why the girls in India are also at risk.
Last question.
When you spoke before the State Department and Congress, what was their reaction? And did you feel that they were actually interested, or just kind of like giving you lip service?
Okay, well, I should clarify that. I spoke at hearings in the U.S. Congress. So it's not like I had a general audience with everybody where I was like addressing the entire Congress. There was a hearing that was called, and when people call a hearing, the congressional representatives that call a hearing are there and they're interested. And people who are not interested don't show up. So I've never actually had a situation where I've had like a hostile hearing. But I'll tell you something, I had an almost hostile, but my first one was at the European Parliament. And the person who was the head of my panel, the guy who was chairing my panel, was a self-described atheist, pro-choice atheist, materialist, socialist.
Everything bad.
Yeah, but he was a great guy. He was great. So I sat there and I talked about the domino effect that comes after forced abortion. And at the end of it, and this was televised, okay? So at the end of this, he said on television, when you came and I heard that you were speaking, I was really nervous about it, and I really thought I was going to disagree with what you had to say, but now having listened to everything you had to say, I oppose forced abortion in China. So he was, so that I know that my message, and another one that could have gone hostile was when I was asked to speak at the Obama White House. They were totally receptive. Now, they didn't do anything, but the people who were there in the room were all nodding their heads, but they didn't take any action. So there's something called the United Nations Family Planning Fund, UNFPA, which has been working hand in hand with the coercive family planning people in China since the inception of the one-child policy, just about. And I have been advocating for them to defund that, and the Obama administration would not defund it, and the Trump administration defunded it. So, all I can say is, no one has been hostile to me, like directly to my face. And I think that the way that they express their hostility is just like doing nothing if they ultimately don't agree with what I'm saying.
For the benefit of our Facebook Live audience and the people who are actually here, tell us how they can get in touch with you to help you out.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, I have a Facebook page, okay? So, there's the Reggie Littlejohn Facebook page. You can try to, befriend me. But then the other thing is I have a Women's Rights Without Frontiers Facebook page. And so you can just get right on there and join, and you can send me messages through the Facebook page. Those are the best ways of getting in touch with me.
Very good. I want to thank all of you out there in Facebook land for viewing this wonderful talk, and let you know that it will be posted so you can forward it to your friends and so forth. And we have many more talks coming up next fall. We have 6 of these wonderful lecture tours every year. So you can visit us at defendlife.org. And if you'd like to help financially, you can see our poster right here. You can go to defendlife.org and you can donate online. And by the way, everything you give is tax deductible. And the other thing I'd like to remind all of you here, as well as people watching on Facebook, is Reggie has very graciously agreed to match whatever we raise during these 5 talks. Dollar per dollar. Up to $2,000. You got that in, you know?
All right, yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. And now we're actually going to take up the collection. Don't go anywhere because we have some important announcements. Could you circulate this basket?
And don't forget to sign up to be on my newsletter, and I also have some information over here as well.
Stick around because we have a wonderful drawing. We only did the order this way to make it easy for our Facebook Live audience to hear the questions. But fill out the card, don't leave now, and put that card in the basket as being circulated. I have a few cards up here because in a few minutes we're going to have a drawing for this wonderful wood carving. This is a wood carving of our Lord Jesus Christ who is crowned of thorns. One of you gets to take this home with you. And it's actually carved in the Holy Land by one of the Ukrainian Christians. And carved from olive wood. So as soon as we get that basket circulated, bring it back up here. Somebody like to write a check, they can make it payable to Defend Life. And now I'd like to make a few announcements. First of all, but before I do that, John Roswell here wants to talk briefly about what's going on in downtown at Planned Parenthood, Maryland's largest killing center. John?
I'm with the Sidewalk Advocates for Life. If any of you are familiar with the 40 Days for Life, this is one step further. We try to have prayer partners and advocates working together. And Allen Howard Street, they will do numerous abortions 5 days a week. We are there right now on every Friday. We're there on the first and third Saturdays when they do abortions. And we are trying to cover Thursday mornings now. And this Thursday was the 3rd Thursday we've been there. And last Thursday, it just shows you how God works behind us. We had a new advocate that had shown up the previous Thursday when we were only going to do one Thursday and volunteered to be with me from then on Thursdays. And as his first day as an advocate, we saved a child. And that is not the first time that a new advocate has done that. And we had one Wednesday, the only Wednesday we've ever been there because a woman could only schedule that one day to come join me. And she had a save. And that tells me God is moving us as instruments. We're there to do His work when He needs us most. And few people ever have a chance to save a life. This is an opportunity for everybody to learn what joy it is to save a life and to feel God working through you as His instrument. So please consider doing that, and I'm going to pass out my contact information. Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. By the way, who here wants to just talk about ending abortion, and who really wants to end abortion? Let's see a show of hands. Who wants to? You want to talk about it, or you want to end it?
End it.
Oh, good, good. That's great. Now, do you want to do something that will really be a giant step towards ending abortion? You all know who Father Frank Pavone is, right? The head of Priests for Life. And who says, very succinctly, until America sees abortion, America will not reject abortion. It's really simple. It's not rocket science. We're a very visual society. We're not a nation of readers, are we? Sadly. But when we do our Face of Truth tours,
We go out, we actually show America what abortion is. And we'll be doing our 18th annual Basic Truth Tour, July the 23rd to July the 27th. We go around, we have 5 stops at heavily trafficked locations every day, 5 days a week, 5 days in a row. And we show America what abortion is. And this has made a huge difference. Think, Defend Life has grown like it never could have grown since we started doing these back in 2001. So we want you to be members of our core team. Anybody can be a member of the core team. You all look like you're very viable candidates. So we go around with us, we provide the transportation, we provide meals, we provide overnight housing, we have Holy Mass every day, we have a wonderful luncheon, we have great luncheon speakers. Matter of fact, one of our speakers will be Reggie Littlejohn. You just learned about that earlier today. So 4 other great speakers too. We're also training the future leaders of the pro-life movement. We really need that, don't we? So that's on one side of this flyer. So please sign up, get in touch with Therese Rodriguez, who I know. She's a homeschooling mom of 6, teaches fertility, natural family planning, does a great job. I knew her from her college days at the University of America. And then on the back of this is sort of a brief history of Defend Life. We are not only Catholic, we're pro-family, we're pro-life, but we're also volunteer, all volunteer. Nobody gets paid. I've never gotten paid, and never will. I don't want them, because I've had a fairly good engineering career, not a great one, but a fairly good one. I can support myself. And that's where we got our reward, not here. But anyway, one of our first directors is now a Catholic priest. He's not only a Catholic priest, he's the president of a Catholic university, Southern Counselor. That's all in this flyer. And then the people who are volunteers, like David Clark, who does our Facebook, and some other people here who do so many things. But we need more volunteers. And if we list those volunteer opportunities at the bottom of the sheet. So if you can help in any way, let me know. Come up and talk afterwards. But we need more volunteers, because simply lots of things are not getting done. And Reggie Littlejohn can certainly use lots of volunteers, so don't forget about her. So, do you like my t-shirt? You see the back of it? Myrna, read the back of it.
Abortion, one heart stops, another heart breaks.
Now read it louder.
Abortion, one heart stops, another heart breaks.
Very good. And this is, by the way, this is the best t-shirt in the entire pro-life movement. Because it's unmistakable, it's unequivocal what we're talking about. You know, pro-life, what is that? Is that animal life? Is that plant life? No, it's human life. So good things happen when you wear this t-shirt. See, I'm convinced that most Americans are pro-life. Our job is to smoke them out. Get them out of the dugout, onto the playing field, from being philosophically against abortion to being publicly pro-life. So if you wear this t-shirt, I guarantee good things will happen. How do you get one? Send an email to t-shirts@defendlife.org. Let us know what your dress is, your shirt size. We have everything from small, which is a child size. Nobody here is a child. But if you have children, we have children's t-shirts. Then we medium, large, extra large, double extra large. And it's a blast to wear these. Good things happen. Yes?
I don't know if somebody made a mistake, but actually a check here to Women's Rights Without Frontiers instead of Defend Life. You better tell them, you gotta write the check to you.
Oh, okay. And who was that check from?
Well, that was me.
Can we mention it?
I'm sorry, I wrote a check to Women's Rights Without Frontiers.
Right,
Okay,
this
so-
is for him, but I mean, if you want.
Yeah. Just why don't you avoid it and just make that another check to
Sure,
Defend Life.
okay.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
So we're completely legal. Remember, we have a lawyer here. You don't want to get her in trouble. But anyway, wearing these pro-life t-shirts is a good things happen. And you got to forget what you have that you're wearing it. But people are smiling. Oh, you like my t-shirt? Great. I have had very few people snarl at me because I think most people are pro-life. Our job is to get them out of the dugout onto the playing field. So with that, I think that's the last announcement. Let's go ahead and pick a winner. You want to pick a winner? Bill? Does everybody put their cards in? Any last call for cards? Okay, I'll make one more announcement. Oh, I just mentioned the three places that Reggie's going to speak tomorrow. St. Peter's, Liberty Town, not far from here, beautiful parish. Get out there sometime. It's the prettiest, one of the prettiest churches in the Archdiocese of Baltimore. That's at 10 o'clock. And then at 1 o'clock, Our Lady Center, right here in Ellicott City. And at 7:30 tomorrow night, St. Joseph's Fullerton, as they call it. It's northeast Baltimore, just on Bel Air Road, just outside the Beltway. Also, tell people that they can watch, if they can't get one of these talks, that they can watch it again on Facebook Live. David will be posting it. And then we have a slightly different version of it that will also be posted that she did today at Christ the King. Christ the King is where her wonderful husband, Rob, is being mentored by Father Ed Meeks, wonderful Catholic church in Towson. Are we ready for the drawing? Good, good. Okay, mix them up good, and we're going to have Reggie draw the winner.
Defend like that.
Okay.
Facebook, defend like
So
that.
you can win it.
Defend like.
It's okay. Then the winner is
Robert M-A-Y, Mayer, M-A-Y-E-R.
There you go, Robert. Get Father Arnold to bless it for you. It is. Anyway, thank you all for coming, and I'm sure Reggie will be here just a few more minutes before we whisk her off so she can get a bright and early start tomorrow morning. Let's close with a Hail Mary. In the name of the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Hail Mary, full of grace,
The Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary,
Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and in the hour of our death. Amen.
Thank you all for coming. God bless you.
Thank you, Jack.